Hey everybody, it's Dr. Nick here. This is going to be a very unique episode of the Hospitality Spirit. It's also going to be a very special episode of the Hospitality Spirit. Throughout the 50 plus, nearly 60 episodes that we have, it's traditionally me asking our amazing guests questions about their career, what advice they have for individuals. And it's been a wonderful experience. I've really enjoyed being on the podcast. But some of the feedback that we've gotten is people want to know more about me, and they want to know about how the podcast started and what I do. You know, throughout random episodes, I might reference points in my career. I might reference the School of Hospitality Leadership where I work. I'm the director of the school. I might mention DePaul University, but no one's ever really kind of heard the story. And that's what I want to do with this episode. I want to give you, the listeners, an insight into who I am, what I do, what we hope to gain by creating this podcast. And this podcast would not be possible without one individual, Jamie. You hear me mention Jamie a lot in the podcast. He is an amazing resource for us. He is the editor extraordinaire of the podcast. And we first met, Jamie and I, several years ago when he was an undergrad at DePaul. He's now working on his graduate degree at DePaul and doing his internship and seeing the world and doing amazing things. So I thought it would be kind of fun for this episode for Jamie to sit in the driver's seat, to be the host of the Hospitality Spirit for a day and have me be the guest. So I hope you enjoy this episode, learning a little bit more about me, what I do, and why I love recording the Hospitality Spirit.
Welcome everybody. We're not necessarily live, and we're not at the corner of State and Jackson, but
we're definitely live.
We are live. I feel my pulse. I feel pretty good. This is the Hospitality Spirit. I'm Jamie. You may not have heard me before, as Nick so kindly introduced me. This is very strange. Normally, I'm listening to Dr. Nick and whoever we have on that week as they are talking and chatting, and I'm furiously writing down notes. But now I have to think and talk and articulate my words, and I'm so excited to be able to actually talk to you after listening for years, literally years.
Yeah, it's great. And just to clarify, you're in New York City right now doing an internship, and I'm here in Chicago, and the amazing beauty of technology has brought us together here. So I'm excited for you to interview me, and don't hold back. Ask me really tough questions, Jamie.
So Nick, I don't know if you know this, but here on the Hospitality Spirit, we like to start in the present and then work our way into the past.
We do.
So can you tell us about your current role as the director of the hospitality school at DePaul University?
Yeah, so I actually came to DePaul almost 10 years ago. And I initially came to DePaul in the role of a faculty member. I had been in higher education for a while, and I was living in Singapore at the time, working for the University of Nevada, Las Vegas' international campus in Singapore. And my contract had come to an end in Singapore, and I had an opportunity to come to a program that was relatively new. Hospitality education is not new, but the hospitality school at DePaul was quite new. And when my contract ended, I came here to Chicago, moved literally halfway around the world, and began as a faculty member. And I started as an instructor, then eventually became an assistant professor and went on to the tenure track, got tenure at DePaul. And in previous episodes, you've heard me kind of talk about what tenure is. And when I became an associate professor with tenure, I took over responsibility as the director also. So first and foremost, I'm still a faculty member. I still teach courses. I still do research. I still serve on committees. And at its core, that's what I love doing. I love being a teacher. I love kind of helping students on their intellectual quest. But also, I kind of wear two hats. My second hat is director. And What director of the school really is responsible for is everything that's going on in the school. So from budgets, day-to-day operations, I oversee the faculty and the staff. I create the curriculum, the schedule that we put on in an academic year. So I'll like go out and I fundraise, raise money. That's a big part of what we do here as a mission-driven institution. So really, everything related to the operation of the school, I have oversight of. That doesn't mean that I'm doing everything every day. I've got an amazing team here. I've got full-time faculty. I've got part-time faculty that we call them adjuncts. I've got some amazing staff. Joseph Leroy, who you've probably heard on the podcast before. Shelley Gibbons runs a lot of the co-curricular programming that we have here. So it's not a one-man show. It's truly a team effort.
Absolutely, 100%. And just working there, in conjunction, just working there quietly over the past few years, I can see how much it is a family, and it does become a team, and it is such a team effort.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How does the role of teacher and director inform each other in how the school is run?
So, I mean, at its core, the way that we structure it here at DePaul is um, we don't hire people to be directors of the school. First and foremost, you are a faculty member. I get a slight course reduction that kind of balances out my schedule. Instead of being a 10-month employee, I'm a 12-month employee. So the two really go hand in hand. And one of the benefits of also being a faculty member is many cases I can put myself in the shoes of the faculty when I make decisions about what courses I'm going to offer when. Is a course going to be offered simultaneously with another one? And really being able to help mentor faculty to be the best they can be in the classroom is much easier because at its core I'm a faculty member. And that I still teach courses. I teach a variety of courses. Right now I'm teaching some courses related to leadership. I'm teaching some courses related to U.S. business culture. I've taught a variety of classes. I've taught hotel operations. I've taught casino operations. I've taught revenue management. I'm not really a numbers person, so I kind of stay away from the accounting courses. But really being able to teach all those courses has made it much easier to be director of the school. It's not an easy job. It's not definitely not a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday job. Just this morning alone, I was on a Zoom call at 7 a.m. with some potential international partners. Some nights my day goes late into the evening interacting with industry and going out and knocking on the proverbial door to help raise money for student scholarships and help find students internships. And so they definitely go hand in hand. I'd like to say that, half my day is director, half my day is faculty, but it never seems to work out that way. Every day is unique.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you kind of find? You have a very long career that I only get snippets of, much like the listeners, over time, and you kind of drop hints, and sometimes you talk about your time as a pilot in opening hotels. How does your plethora of experience come to inform your role as a teacher?
So I think it's a really interesting question because being a teacher, at least at DePaul, and I'm not going to make a generalization that all higher education is like this and every university and school and college might be like this. But here at DePaul, all of our faculty have significant industry experience. It's not just they did an internship once. I mean, these are individuals that have management experience, leadership experience. Most of our faculty have worked in multiple segments of the industry, and I'm no different. You're right, I was an airline pilot. I've worked in the hotel industry. I've worked in the casino industry. I've worked in the restaurant industry. Um, if anyone's listened to the hospitality spirit, they know that sort of mobility and that sort of movement is pretty common. But one of the reasons that we want that practical experience with all of our faculty is that learning about hospitality is not just about the theory. We need to be able to incorporate that with the practice. And by having people in the classroom that are really focused on, yeah, this is what the textbook says, but let me tell you how it really is a powerful way to learn about the industry. I think it also builds us a lot of credibility in the industry as well. We kind of say it tongue in cheek, live from the corner of State and Jackson on the podcast, but that's the reality. The School of Hospitality Leadership is located at the corner of State and Jackson in arguably one of the greatest hospitality and tourism towns holistically, if not just the nation, but around the world. Chicago is a hospitality town. We have meetings and events here. We have airlines based here. We have restaurant groups that are in many states based here. We have hotel companies like Hyatt based here. So being able to have faculty and my own industry experience really creates this synergy between the educational experience you get in the School of Hospitality Leadership and the practicality.
100%. No, and I think being 10 blocks less away from the West Loop and all of these uh, growing industries and these different parts of the hospitality industry that are blooming is incredible and incredibly useful. And I think that one of the strengths that I've experienced, especially now as a member of the business school as a graduate student, is you are such a good liaison between industry and students. You do such a good job at finding these students different avenues to enter the industry and ways to connect them with who they need to be connected to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably, if somebody asked me what differentiates us as the School of Hospitality Leadership, and let me back up and let me actually paint the picture for you. So here in the United States, we've got, when you factor in, vocational schools, community colleges, associate degree offering institutions, for profit, not for profit, four-year institutions, graduate programs, undergraduate, I mean, everything. You're talking about nearly 1,000 programs here in the US. And then that doesn't even take into account what you see in Europe, what you see in Asia, what you see down in places like Australia, South America, Africa. I mean, hospitality and tourism is truly the largest industry in the world. 1 in 10 people work in this industry. So, not surprisingly, there's a lot of hospitality programs out there, and they go by different names. I mean, we're called the School of Hospitality Leadership, but there's the School of Hotel Administration. You could be maybe focused on tourism. You could be focused maybe on the culinary side of things. But here at DePaul, what makes us different in the School of Hospitality Leadership is a couple of things. One, we are housed within a college of business. And being housed within a college of business means that students that are majoring in our program at their core have a business degree. They can always fall back on that business degree. The other thing that probably separates us and differentiates us from or other institutions and programs is our location. Being at the corner of State and Jackson provides us so many opportunities to engage the industry. But really, kind of more recently, what has began to differentiate us is our co-curricular programming. So the school itself started with a $7.5 million gift from the Hilton Foundation, the philanthropic arm of Hilton, about 10 or 11 years ago. But within the last couple of years, we received an additional gift from the Marriott Family Foundation for $1.8 million. And with that $1.8 million, we began to build out our co-curricular programming. And what does that mean? Well, the way that I describe co-curricular programming is what's going on outside of the classroom to better prepare the students for their careers. So we do things like a dedicated mentor program where we partner up one student with one industry mentor for the entire academic year. And that one-on-one relationship is so valuable. I mean, we talk about on the podcast about mentorship and why it's so important. Well, we practice what we preach. So during the course of a 4-year degree, a student could have 4 industry mentors. That's a tremendous opportunity. We've got student clubs. We've got student clubs that are focused on the restaurant and food and beverage industry, our food and beverage club. We've got a club focused on the meeting and event industry, our event management club. We've got a student club focused on students that are minorities, so the National Society of Minorities in Hospitality. Over the years, we've had clubs related to finance and technology. We've had clubs related to the private club industry. We've had clubs related to the hotel industry. And whether it's that mentorship program or the student clubs or our recruiting events, we just every January, with the exception of during COVID, we do a big career fair. And a couple years ago, before COVID, that career fair was attended by 95 companies. We have 500 registered student attendees. So it's all of that stuff that happens outside of the classroom that we create and we package for the students. But you're probably saying, well, what did you use the $1.8 million for? Well, a lot of that is to pay for that co-curricular programming. So the clubs, the students traveling to conferences, the mentor program, the career fair, that cost $0 for the student. It also costs $0 for the industry. So we pay for all that. So it's not uncommon for us to, for example, let's say the event management club wants to go to the PCMA conference. Well, we'll send 5, 10, maybe 12 students and a faculty member. We'll pay for their airfare. We'll pay for their hotel. We'll pay for their conference registration. Because we believe that being able to go out and do things like that is so important. We've got a huge portfolio of study abroad programs, both short term and long term. You can spend an entire quarter in Florence, or you can go for 12 days to Singapore, Hong Kong, and Macau. So all of that programming is so important for us. And at its core, I think that's what begins to differentiate us. I mean, I go back to think I went to hotel school. Like I went to a great program in the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and I will never disparage programs. It was a great program. But this is a different program here at DePaul. We're very small, we're boutique, and we like that. We like to create a bespoke experience for our students here at DePaul.
Absolutely. And as a wise man once said, industry experience does not replace education, and education doesn't replace work
It's
experience. They both have their roles.
It most certainly does not. And we say that, and again, we practice what we preach, that all of our students are required to do 2 internships. Most of our students have a part-time job, or maybe even a full-time job while they're going to school. The end result becomes a student leaving the School of Hospitality Leadership, going out into their career, and they've already got that experience that they need to land that great dream job. So whether they go into a management training program, they go into another type of position, maybe they decide to go out and start their own business, they've already got that credential. My worst fear is that a student leaves us and didn't work, didn't build up the experience, didn't get engaged. Because, yeah, they might be able to check the box that they have the degree, but at the same time, they need to have both, because education doesn't replace work experience and vice versa.
Absolutely. And college, I found, is not just about attending classes. I mean, all of my teachers said this to me. If you just go to the classes and just do those assignments, you're missing more than half of your experience. It is the community that forms around the things that we care about. And in the case of DePaul and this school, it's hospitality. Uh
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%. I mean, what we try to do is we sometimes use the phrase an a la carte experience. That if you go to a restaurant and you sit down and the entire menu is already pre-planned, everyone's getting the same appetizer, everyone's getting the same entree, everyone's getting the same dessert. It's a prefix. You're hoping that everybody likes what you're eating during the course of that meal. Or you can go to a restaurant and everybody can order a la carte. They can order what they want for an appetizer, what they want for a entree, and what they want for a dessert. We want to create the experience here where it is truly an a la carte experience, that you can pick the clubs you want to be in. If you're hungry and you want to be in all the clubs, great, more power to you. If you want to do one study abroad or you want to do all the study abroads, great, more power to you. If you want to take on a leadership role in one of those clubs or in the career fair planning committee, you can do that. The sky's the limit, and we know it's not anecdotal. We see the proof is in the pudding. The students that get more engaged, the students that are sitting down with Shelley Gibbons to talk about finding a mentor and getting involved in clubs and going to that career fair and going up and shaking hands and giving their resume, going to our recruiting events on Tuesdays, that those students are going to have a greater likelihood of landing the job that they want when they graduate.
Yeah, no, I totally see that. Do you find that kind of reflected in the students that come to DePaul University? Like what are the makeup what is the makeup of students who are the students who come to DePaul University?
Well, I think it's the students that come to DePaul University are probably very reflective of what we see in the School of Hospitality Leadership. I mean, DePaul at its core is a mission driven institution. We follow this Vincentian idea of following the importance of making sure that people have opportunities to work, making sure that people have opportunities to education. Well, what does that mean, opportunities? Well, we have a significant number of students at DePaul and a significant number of students just in the School of Hospitality Leadership that are first generation college students. We have a significant number of students that are students of color, so minority students. And we take pride in that. And that not only follows what we believe in the school, but that's the larger mission of the university. That also affords us the opportunity within the school through very generous gifts from that initial Hilton gift, the Marriott Foundation gift, and then very, very generous scholarship donations from individuals, corporations to supply significant amounts of financial aid to our students. Just in the School of Hospitality Leadership alone, about on an academic year, we give out about $300,000 to students to help them with the cost of tuition. We are a private institution. Tuition is not cheap. So anything that we can do to help support that through scholarship is important to us. The challenge, of course, is not every student takes advantage of that scholarship opportunity. It's sometimes, Jamie, it's like pulling teeth to try to get students to apply. And this is not unique to DePaul. When I talk to my colleagues at other institutions and even my colleagues in other areas at DePaul, we say, do you have problems with students trying to apply for scholarships? There's a resounding absolutely we do. That it doesn't take a lot. And I think sometimes students think, I don't have the time to do it. Scholarship applications don't take that much time. We make it as simple as possible for you to get that. People say, well, I'm not going to have a shot. Well, we make a point that if you have financial need, we're going to do our best to make sure everybody that applies for the scholarship gets something. And that's so important to us here. I mean, I can't thank Shelley Gibbons, the Assistant Director of Student Development, my awesome faculty that serve on that scholarship committee. They do their best to make sure that every student possible gets that money, but they got to apply for it. They got to fill out their FAFSA and they got to put their application in for it. And, their parents aren't going to do it. They're adults now. They're over 18. They need to do that. And sometimes all it is just checking a box that you're interested, making sure you got a FAFSA, uploading a copy of your resume, maybe a short paragraph essay. That's it. I mean, you can knock that out in an hour or two on the weekend, but the ROI of putting in that time to fill out a scholarship is tremendous.
Absolutely, no, it's huge. And I think this school is full of those same opportunities. It's this college is all about all of these different opportunities and paths in front of you, and they're only going to, you know, come to fruition if you put yourself out there, if you put out the minimum amount of work just to seize them.
hmm hmm Yeah, I mean, it's. I'll use the word frustrating. It's a little frustrating at times that more students don't apply. I mean, the benefit, of course, is that we're able to give more money to the pool of students. But I would love to see a day down the line when every single one of our students is applying for scholarships. I mean, that is a good problem to have, that you're able to support those students. And again, that's just helping out with tuition. We cover the cost of so much more, getting involved in student clubs, student travel, getting a mentor, going to a career fair, We don't charge students for that. I mean, it's a little frustrating when I see other universities and other programs charging students to get a mentor or charging students to go to a career fair. We see that as our responsibility here to make sure that when a student leaves the DePaul School of Hospitality Leadership, they are the best prepared that they can be.
Yeah, no, I totally see it. What has the path of your career been? I know we've talked about it briefly here, and of course over the podcast, but can you give us a little bit more of a timeline, and
Sure.
maybe how it's helped shaped your time here at DePaul, how you came to education, and how it's affected
Yeah.
how you teach?
Wow. I don't know if I want this to be a 3-hour podcast, so I'll try to condense it as much as possible. Um, I started working in the hospitality industry when I was in high school. I did it because I, and I think I've actually said this on the podcast, I was just looking for a little bit of pocket change. I needed some money to be able to do the things that a teenager wanted to do, to buy the CDs. And yes, this was at the time where there were CDs, to buy the CDs, to pay for gas in my car, to be able to go to an Orioles game because I grew up in Baltimore. And I just wanted that money. So I started picking up jobs in the hospitality industry. I worked in a small little Italian deli, which was also a restaurant called Amore's. But just like many people that start out in the industry, what did I do? I started washing dishes. I washed dishes, and then I eventually got promoted to cashier, and then I eventually got. They gave me the trust to start making food, so I made pizzas, and I worked the grill, I worked the salad. I basically did every position, and it was amazing. I loved working in the restaurant. The benefits were tremendous. It really allowed me to quickly see and appreciate the high volume business, and to see that every time you interacted with a guest, it was not a monotonous experience. But I kind of realized very quickly that while I loved food, and I still do, and I think food becomes a theme on the podcast, whether or not we intend it to be.
Yeah,
The restaurant industry just wasn't for me. And it's nothing bad against the restaurant industry. I mean, the people that work in food and beverage are spectacular. And I am so thankful for everything that they do, but it just wasn't for me. And I kind of gravitated towards the hotel industry. And so I shifted over and began working at a small 250 room Hilton. I was still in high school at this time, and just like in the restaurant, I started at the bottom. I was a bellman, so I carried luggage up to rooms. I drove the airport shuttle back and forth from the hotel to BWI Airport, and took people to various office parks around the town where I lived, and I loved it, man. Being a shuttle driver, I still sometimes today think how cool a job that would be to go back and be able to do that. Um, it was a very, very fun job just to be
yeah,
able to interact with people. But I realized, and I eventually started working at the front desk there, the logical place where most people that go into the industry will start. And it occurred to me very quickly that that's what I wanted to do for my career. And that's what I needed to go to school for. So I went to my boss one day at the time, and I said, I think I might actually want to do this. What should I do? And they said, well, you got to go to hotel school. You got to go out to hospitality school, and you got to learn about how to manage a housekeeping department, and how to manage unions, and how to price a room, and how to recover from service failures, because you're only going to learn so much working. Going back to the old adage of work experience does not replace education, and education does not replace work experience. So that's what I did. Where the vast majority of all of my social circle, stayed locally. They went to the University of Maryland, or colleges in that proximity. I literally packed up everything and moved 3/4 of the way across the country, and I went to UNLV, and I went to hotel school, and worked all throughout college. Worked at some amazing properties. Vegas, what a great place to work. So I worked at the Bellagio. Was very, very fortunate to work there, to really kind of understand high volume, But at the same time, I learned very quickly that I was interested in the luxury side of it. So Bellagio at the time when I was there, we got the 5-star, 5 diamond award. For those that don't know, that is really an incredibly prestigious award for a luxurious hospitality environment, very similar to what we see as like the Michelin star in the food and beverage sector. Um, so being able to work at a 5-star, 5 diamond, 3,500 room, high volume casino, mega luxury resort in Las Vegas while going to school was tremendous. Did that most of my time while in school. It was great money, great opportunity. Some long nights. There'd be times where I would work graveyard and immediately get off graveyard and go right to school. And there'd be some times where I'd go to school all day and then go into work at 3 and work until 11 or midnight. But that's Vegas. That's kind of how the cookie crumbles there. It's a 24/7, 365 town. But after I graduated, it was time because I had worked in high school and I had worked throughout college, that I had the requisite experience to start taking on those leadership roles. And eventually was recruited by several different companies, but landed on a company in the central coast of California called the Pebble Beach Company. And I worked at the Inn at Spanish Bay under an amazing leader named Robert Berner, that I still look today as one of the guiding mentors that I had in my career. And I worked with Robert multiple times in my career, and I still today consider him a friend. And I love to kind of follow his. He's older than me, obviously, and I love to though follow his career. When I go back and I think, how do I describe the way that I approach the hospitality industry and the customer experience? People say, where did you kind of learn that? And I say, I learned it from a lot of people, but without a doubt, Robert Berner is the person that taught me to be who I am today from a customer service standpoint in hospitality. And then, after that, I continued to work in various luxury resorts. I spent some time down in Palm Springs at the lodge at Rancho Mirage, spent some time at Quail Lodge in Carmel. Really, primarily, the hotel operations side of me had me over in California. And I liked it. California was a great place to live and work. It's a great hospitality and tourism state. The destinations where I were, each of them offered something very different. But then one day I had an opportunity to pivot a little bit and leave hotel operations and help out to be a opening consultant under the tutelage of Dr. Carl Brunlick to design and to be on a team that helped design and create a lot of the pre-opening materials for what was at the time the most expensive casino ever built. It was the Wynn Las Vegas. It was a $2.7 billion, 3,500 room resort on the Las Vegas Strip. So I began working as a consultant, and that eventually pivoted into a role in human resources training. And it was quite a shock to go from hotel operations, dealing with guests checking in and checking out, and making sure that room occupancy was where it needed to be, and making sure that revenue needed to be where it was, to shifting into human resources. And while it was a major shift and a major pivot, it was probably right place at the right time, and it laid the foundation for the rest of my career, because I really fell in love with training, and I loved training people to do their job, and I loved developing people. And I was very intimately involved in designing the management training program, the internship program for Wynn Las Vegas. Eventually went over as the manager of training and development for the Venetian Palazzo right next door. An amazing opportunity. That was a 7,000 room, 10,000 employee resort, working with great people like Don Merritt and great people like Artie Nathan was just truly special. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was essentially laying the foundation for my job that I have today. Training is kind of what we do in higher education. So going back to speaking to some other mentors, people like Kathy Nelson and Carl Brunlick, said, I said, just like the conversation I had with my GM back at the Hilton when I was 17 years old, I was now fast forward decade plus later having a conversation with my mentors about saying, okay, I think I like this training thing. I don't think I want to do it in the industry. I think I actually might want to do it in higher education. I think I actually might want to be a teacher. Um, and I know I didn't want to do like public school teaching. Public school teachers are great. That just wasn't what I was looking for. I wanted to teach hospitality specifically. So they gave me the recommendation to go back and get my PhD at UNLV. That's what I did. And from there, I became a faculty. I became an adjunct. So I picked up a class here and there while I did my PhD studies, focused really on hospitality and more specifically on human resources. I really liked human resources. It's something that was always passionate to me. And a big focus of mine while I was going to school was the relationship between supervisor gender and turnover intention and employee job satisfaction. So I looked at that, did some research on that, and finished my PhD, went to UNLV Singapore, continued to teach, and now here I am today at DePaul. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And it's funny because some people say, do you miss working in the hospitality industry? And my answer is kind of yes, but I don't think that I've really left the hospitality industry. I have just a very different perspective and a different role in it now that I'm still doing training. I'm just doing it I'm getting the trainees a little sooner before they actually start working for the company. I'm giving them the knowledge, skills, and abilities they need to get that dream job and to be successful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that uh, the fact that you have this very long and winding path to where you are now, which also includes flying planes, which was also a giant shock to me, um, allows you to really give genuine and thoughtful advice about whatever that student wants to go into because you've touched so many different corners of the hospitality industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think so much of what I learned, particularly through under people like Carl Polanyi and Don Merritt at Win, was because I designed the management training program, the internship program, and then we had to go out and recruit for it. And so while doing my PhD, a lot of this idea of how do you recruit effectively, like I wanted to understand how to recruit people effectively, because the last thing we want to do is have somebody come work for us and then leave after 60 days or 90 days. I mean, we've invested so much in hiring them. We've invested so much in recruiting. We've invested so much in training. And then to have them leave is like, I mean, talk about a major like deflation. I mean, it's just like, oh, I can't believe they left. So one of the ways to combat that is to give people a realistic job preview, to say, this is what it's really going to be like. Like, this is what it feels like to be at the front desk at 3 o'clock in the morning when ain't much going on. Like, when you're kind of sleepy and there isn't much going on. And this is what happens when guests get really angry and how you deal with it. This is what happens when you have to walk a guest. This is what happens when you're in a sold out situation. Being able to talk about that, not from a theoretical perspective, being able to talk about that from, I've actually had to do that. Like I've actually had to walk guests. I've actually had guests get so angry with me or get so angry with the experience, and I'm the one that they're engaging with, that veins are popping out in their head and their face is red and they're screaming and they're yelling. And being able to explain that to students and being able to explain to them the importance of things like empathy, being
Mhm.
able to explain to them the importance of critical thinking, the importance of embracing diversity. These are things that I experienced, and being able to convey that to students is important to me because I don't want them to go into the industry and say, well, I didn't know it was going to be like this.
Yeah. And I think those are great things, not just for hospitality, but how you lead your life. And I think that one of the great things about listening to you talk for hours and hours and hours is that
It has been hours. It's
it has, I mean,
60 plus episodes. You've probably listened to me talk more than just about anybody.
right. Is at a certain point, I realized that the advice I was listening was not just good advice for my career, but also, how do I want to move forward with my life in that, finding new ways to do things, finding mentors, finding people who can help you on your journey
Hmm.
is essential. Uh,
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I think so much of what, again, I said it earlier and I've said it in podcasts countless times, the role of, I see my role as an academic right now, not just as director of the school, but also a faculty member and a professor, is I truly believe that my role is to be a guide for a student on their intellectual quest, that every student is going to be different. And I understand that. And being able to be there as a sounding board, to be empathetic, to realize that every student experience is going to be different, being able to be there with no judgment, but also being there sometimes to give them some tough love, to say, you know what, you're not doing well in your courses. You haven't logged into the course in 3 weeks. Like,
mhm.
that's unacceptable.
Yeah.
You had an interview scheduled and you didn't show up. Let me tell you why that was a bad decision. So even the bad decisions and the errors, because this is a safe environment, I'd rather them make those mistakes here with me, than do it once they get out in the industry. So being able to kind of help guide students, and listen, some students are rock stars. Like, they hit it. They do all their assignments on time. They're involved in everything. They're engaged. They go to the career fair. They shake the hand. They've got a good resume. They present themselves well. And some students just need a little bit of extra help, and that's okay. And being able to, almost like a chameleon, adapt to the individual student needs, I think, is incredibly important, not just for me and for my team here at the SHL, but also for anybody that's an educator.
Yeah. Kind of talking about student needs, what hole did you see in the hospitality school that made you think, I think a podcast is the next step of evolution?
um, it's probably a lot of things. One, as listeners of the podcast, and you certainly will know, is I'm an incredibly introverted person. I am. If you look up the word introvert in the dictionary, you will probably see my face right next to it. And I've always been that way. I've always been an introvert. And some people are like, "That's insane, Nick. Like, you."
No, you know what?
Well,
I see it. I remember we were having dinner one time, and Nick pulls me. He nudges me and he says, "You should make a toast." Uh, which is, I think, one of the most introverted things I've ever seen in my life.
yeah,
Instead of making a toast myself, I'm gonna I'm gonna pull on this
yeah,
person's shirt until they
yeah,
make a toast.
yeah. I'm the host of the dinner, but
Yeah,
why don't you make the toast?
yeah, exactly.
No, I'm an introvert, and listen, I will always stand by the fact that I'm an introvert, um, not as a disability, not as an Achilles heel. Like, I embrace it. It is who I am. I've been that way my whole life. And it might be really weird that I go into the hospitality industry as an introvert. For those that really don't understand this concept of being an introvert, somebody that's an introvert, it is draining. It is taxing to me to engage with other people. Like, I'm often very quiet. And it's not that I'm in a bad mood. It's actually the opposite. Like, me being quiet and me being to myself is actually how I recharge my batteries. Some people that are extroverted, they recharge their batteries by interacting with other people and doing things and being the center of a social environment. I'm not that way. But when I was in the hospitality industry, I felt very safe to be able to be an introvert and be able to be and to be outgoing and engaging without fear of any penalty. I mean, part of being an introvert is when you talk to people, you're a little nervous about how they're going to react to what you say, and you're afraid what they're going to think about you after the fact. But in hospitality, it was kind of safe because I'm going to check you in. I'm going to be really nice and outgoing, and then I'm not going to see you again.
Yes.
At worst, you're going to be here in a restaurant maybe for a couple hours, or so I felt very safe, and it allowed me as an introvert to almost be extroverted. Now, it was exhausting. Like I would leave my shifts, whether I was a manager, or I was a front desk agent, and it would take me a while just to decompress and to recharge my batteries. So, long story short, back to your question, being on a podcast to me seemed like a really safe way to talk about something that I'm really passionate about because no one's watching me. I mean, literally, except for my dog sitting on the sofa across me right now. No
Right.
one is watching me do this podcast. It's you. I mean, I feel very, very safe and very comfortable talking to you in this environment. So when the podcast was the normal or the logical way for me to communicate and to talk. But I needed to have some objectives. So like, why did I create the podcast? I created the podcast first and foremost to help people figure out what they want to do in this amazing industry. Like I said, my role as an academic is to be a guide for students on their intellectual quest. We very intentionally, I mean, the guests that we've had on this podcast are incredibly diverse.
Hmm.
They're diverse in terms of the individual. They're diverse in terms of the industry that they're in. They're diverse in terms of their roles in the industry. They're diverse geographically. We've had people from Tokyo to Denmark to Spain to the UK. We've had people all over the US. I mean, it's amazing the diversity from Singapore. I mean, the diversity of people that we've had on this podcast has been tremendous. And I do that because you never know who's going to listen. You never know. I mean, I think back to where I was my freshman year of college, and I kind of knew I wanted to go in the hotel industry, but I had no idea what that meant. I had no idea the directions I could go and what the steps that I was going to need to take to get to reach my professional goals. So I wanted the podcast to be able to do that. So it's why, you said it kind of jokingly at the beginning, but it's true. It's why for most of the podcasts, we'll always start with the present. So we start with the current. So we say, what are you doing now? What's that like? And now let's work backwards and
Yeah.
let's figure out how you got to where you are, what lessons you learn and what advice you have for people. So, the first objectives was to create something for people who had no idea what they wanted to do. The second objective is for people that maybe are already in the industry and they want to switch and they want to do something different. There's not too many industries out there that switching segments and switching jobs is not only relatively easy, but to some degree it's encouraged to get that diversity. I mean, I remember most recently we had Ryan Levesque, an alum, worked for dozens of different hotels. And that's relatively normal and that's definitely relatively common. And so I wanted to be able to help people say, okay, you know what, I'm working in this segment of the lodging industry. Maybe I want to try something different and hear from people that are actually in it. Or maybe it's somebody that's doing restaurants and now they want to switch over to casinos. Or maybe it's somebody that says, you know what, I don't want to be in the day-to-day operations of a hospitality business, but I want to find a way to support it. So we'll talk to people that are maybe on the periphery. We'll talk to airline pilots. We'll talk to people that run tour companies. It's not uncommon for me to have other really inspiring academics, people that are running consultants, people that are doing hotel architecture and design and landscaping. So, this industry is so broad and diverse that I want to help people be able to do that. Finally, what I really want to do is create teaching tools. And this is not a podcast that is strictly for me to listen to when I'm driving somebody out to the airport
Right.
or I'm riding the CTA. I get so much satisfaction out of other teachers, whether they're high school teachers or college teachers, teachers here in the US, using these podcasts as supplemental teaching materials. Is the hospitality spirit going to replace a textbook? No, it won't. But when you're sitting talking about, you know, revenue management and why it's important, well, I've got a podcast for you. I've got multiple podcasts for you that can do that, whether it's revenue management in the airline industry, revenue management in the hotel industry, revenue management in food and beverage. I got podcasts for that. So really being able to say, we're now at the point where we're doing two episode releases a month. We've got an instructor's guide that faculty can use that has discussion questions, bios of the guests. Having them use that as a tool in the classroom is great. We don't charge for it. We're never going to charge for the podcast. It's totally free for people to use. And we put it up on a variety of platforms. So we put it up on Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube. If we have a guest or we think there's demand some places where those services aren't available, we'll put it on a different platform. So, ZJ Tong was recently on the episode talking about the importance of tourism in China. So we put it on a platform that was able to be downloaded by guests in the mainland of China. So, we don't have sponsorship. We don't ask for money from anybody, listeners, or, I'm not going to stop a podcast halfway through and say, this portion of the podcast was sponsored by Bloom. I'm never going to do that. That's not what the objective of this is. Mm-hmm. I don't get paid extra for this. We do this totally voluntary. So it's fun to do.
No, it's a blast. It's been an absolute journey for me. I mean, I started when I was in my teens. Now I'm 23. It's and it's been an enormous journey. And I can say this sincerely, Dr. Nick, you have been one of the great mentors of my life. I didn't come in here looking for a mentor, but you showed up and you've been instrumental in helping me figure out what I want to do with my life, and it's been fantastic. And I cannot thank you enough.
I appreciate that. That means a lot. I mean, as if you're listening to this and there's somebody like that in your life, it's difficult to quantify how much it means for them for you to say that. When a student or a former student or somebody I'm working with comes to me and says, you know what, it was difficult, but I appreciate it. Or an alum comes back and says, what I learned in that class 4 or 5 years ago about how to recover from a service failure in a high stress environment, I actually use that. Mm-hmm. It means so much. So this is why we do it. This is why we have chosen the path that we have. And to be honest with you, Jamie, we're well over 60 episodes now, 20,000 plus downloads. I mean, the sky's the limit. I see no reason why I'm going to stop doing this. At some point, I'm going to have to cut you loose because you're going to say, right. I'm out making movies, or I'm in Hollywood. I can't stop my $100 million movie production job to help you with this little podcast.
Well, listen, that's why we have 2 episodes a month. If it was weekly, that's a different story. But I could squeeze in between features.
But I'm going to keep doing this until I can't. It's great. Wherever I go, I take I don't think people realize how simplistic our setup is when we record these. I mean, I've got a little pair of Sony headphones. I've got a little Yeti Blue microphone. We are not sponsored by either. I will just make that known. But I think they're the best out there. I've got my laptop. Wherever I am, anywhere in the world, as long as there's an internet connection, we can record. And the software that we use is totally web-based. So it's great. I mean, for a little investment of time and resources, the ROI is spectacular.
No, it's been incredible. And as we kind of start to wrap things up, you talked about the kids, the students who are hearing this, maybe even in high school, who want to get into the hospitality industry. They don't know how. What would you say to them? What kind of advice would you give to them?
apply. They're, as I said, world's largest industry. This industry has survived recessions, financial crisis, global financial crisis. It survived pandemics. It's not going anywhere. People are still going to travel for business and leisure purposes. There's always going to be hotels. I think if I didn't major in hospitality, I would have majored in history because I love history. And I go back to, thousands and thousands of years to things like the Silk Road, how goods were able to be transported from East Asia all the way to Europe. And I read this history, whether it's Herodotus, whether it's Marco Polo, whatever it is, you see examples of hospitality, hotels, places, public houses, people to stop and have a meal, someplace safe. The hospitality industry is going to be here forever. And there are so many opportunities. There are opportunities for you to get in entry-level positions. There are amazing companies that have amazing benefits, but all it takes is you just getting your foot in the door. And the sooner you make that commitment to get your foot in the door and start growing, you're off to the races. There are very few ways to work your way up the career ladder in this industry without starting on the bottom. So just like I did washing dishes or working the front desk or driving that amazing shuttle van back and forth to the airport, there's no line cutting. There's no way to jump over that. You got to do it. And it's frustrating sometimes to be sitting in front of a student that says, well, I have a bachelor's degree, I have an MBA, but I have no work experience. I want a management job in hotels. I'm going to say, you can want, but you still got to pay your dues. You still got to start at the front desk. You still got to start somewhere. So the sooner that you make that commitment, you're good to go. And this will be the last time I plug the Paul, but when we design all of our co-curricular programming and we design the way that we engage in industry, a lot of it is designed to help students get that very first job. There are, whether it's a weekly email we send out with all the openings. Today we had a recruiting event at school where our friends at Let Us Entertain You came in and sat down and were recruiting for several hours. Whether it's our big career fair in January, we do so much to basically put every single opportunity that's given to us in front of the students multiple times a week. They're probably sick of the emails. They're probably sick of the job postings. Every time they walk out of the restroom, there's just more job flyers. But that's what you got to do. And if, come see me, go to your faculty members, talk to a mentor, talk to your career center. I promise you, if you want a job, there is one out there for you in hospitality and tourism.
Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. Well, Dr. Nick, you are an associate professor and the director of the School of Hospitality Leadership. And I want to thank you for letting me be on the Hospitality Spirit today.
Thank you for being a wonderful host. You have continued to carry the guest host baton like those before you. And here's to talking again in episode 600.
Let's do it.
All right. Thank you, Jamie.
You got it.